I think this is kind of an unusual strategy for La Bataille de Hassenhausen. All the times I played the original game Auerstedt, of which this is a redesign of that game, I don't think I'd ever tried this before. Something about the map and the forces made me think this was something worth a look. What we're looking at here is the board at the 12 p.m. turn. The game starts with the 6 a.m. turn. So that's 6 hours of gameplay. And it's played out a little strangely. It has to do with the meeting engagement style of this battle and the marching distances for each of the armies. The French arrive at that map edge. They have a clear road all the way to Hassenhausen. So obviously they want to cluster there and gather their forces over the course of the morning. And they've ended up here. This is the 3rd Division, mainly in squares over in this open area. That's the 1st Division, and then the 2nd Division on the right of Hassenhausen there, kind of the east. And the Prussians kind of have a similar situation in that their entry points are here and there, and they don't have a good road network to march all the way to Hassenhausen, as they did historically. And they rushed up and engaged the French piecemeal. So the idea here was, don't do that. Gather the divisions as they arrive back along this stream, whose name I can't recall. I should probably look that up. But they aligned themselves. This is the 4th Division. That's Schmettau. 3rd Division, which comes in second in arrival, Wartensleben. And they are north of Taugwitz. This is the reserve, the Guard Division, and Arnhem's Division. And then Orange's Division is coming in here, headed for Reyenhausen. So the 3 line divisions of the main army are here, and the reserve behind them. Additionally, the mass of cavalry is here. 4th Division, the 1st Division of the reserve, and the 2nd Division cavalry. And then far on the other side is the advance guard and the 3rd Division cavalry. Now the thing about this is, in 6 hours of game time, no one has really come into contact. Only at this most recent stage has these lines of skirmishing Fusiliers and the elite grenadiers of the French formations just begun to fight. And they've inflicted 1 casualty, or 3 casualties in total, and that's it. So the armies have gathered completely unbloodied, and they're going to face off. Elements of the Prussian cavalry do begin the game forward around Hassenhausen. But they slowly pulled back to the flank positions where we see them. And the French, seeing no one in front of them and their gathering strength, having amassed around Hassenhausen, started to move forward. That's how they've reached this point here. They're more or less looking to attack, but they're going to run into a buzzsaw. The whole of the Prussian line is studded with their pretty good artillery. It has good strength, good morale, good staying power. Their infantry is horrible, but the French will find it hard going to get past those guns. And of course, that French left flank is very vulnerable. With this massive cavalry here, they may well have to stay in square, and that opens them up to an attack by the Orange's 2nd Division here, once they deployed Reyenhausen. In this game, victory for the French comes in the form of morale levels inflicted on the Prussians. So the more casualties they can inflict and the more units they can rout, the better they do and the better chance they have to win. But they can do that anywhere. They could have held back at Hassenhausen and just waited for the Prussians to come to them, which is, historical. But the Prussians know that if they go piecemeal, they're going to lose every time. That was a reason for the Prussians to hold up. Now we're looking at a very short time window here for each side to make a dash at victory. There's only 3 more hours left in the game in terms of game terms. That's 9 turns. It's going to be hard for either side to achieve their objectives. And for the Prussians, they need to occupy Hassenhausen here and potentially, to achieve a really decisive victory, exit forces off of that map edge over there. The more forces they can exit, the better their level of victory. And if they can inflict morale level, enough losses and routes on the French, that'll improve their level as well. So I want to find out if the Prussians could win if they played the slow build-up and then unleash a massive attack with all of their might. And to see if the French, now with their force completely contained right here, can they play rope-a-dope and eke out their own victory simply by repelling the Prussian attacks. Now that the real fighting is set to begin, I think the next 3 hours up to the end of the game will really be kind of interesting. Might be a real bloodbath. This is the 2 p.m. at Hassenhausen. I think all I can say is, damn, how did it come to this? Might be kind of hard to tell because it looks like just a giant scrum, but essentially the French are surrounded. Prussian cavalry is all along the rear here. I mean, the road is kind of open, but a line of cavalry, advance guard, 3rd Division, 2nd Division, 1st Division of the Reserve, all along the rear. The French clustered into squares. This is the 2nd Division infantry here. 4th Division infantry here, and then 3rd Division infantry there. So there's practically nowhere for the French to go. And the Prussians haven't even committed their reserve yet. The Arnhem and the Guard Kunem's division are right there. Also, strangely, Prussians have been completely unable to limber any of their guns of the 3rd and 4th Division, so it's been a cavalry and infantry affair. So what the heck happened? Well, it was all that cavalry. The Prussians have, let's see, strictly speaking, 15 regiments of cavalry at their disposal, the majority of it heavy, against 3 regiments for the French. So the Prussian advance guard cavalry over here just charged the French cavalry and kept them busy, kept them either routed or exhausted. They were unable to do anything about the Prussian infantry. And then the mass of this Prussian heavy cavalry just swung around this flank here, keeping the French in squares because they had no defense. They couldn't protect their own flanks. No cavalry to help them. That allowed the 2nd Prussian Division to just move up with their infantry, grenadiers, plus a little bit of help from artillery, and just smash the squares that were there. And that broke the French left. And with nothing really holding the Prussian cavalry, they kind of swooped around here. The French, trying to retreat, really had no choice but to try to form square to keep that cavalry at bay and make very short marches, retreats, but still getting caught by the Prussian infantry, slow as it is. So it's that classic combined arms conundrum. Without cavalry to parry the Prussians, they couldn't very well stay in column or line to oppose the Prussian infantry because they'd get rolled up from the flank or rear by that pretty, even though it's heavy cavalry, it's still much faster than the French infantry was able to move. So they were trying to play both sides, and they ended up getting hit pretty hard, taking a lot of casualties, and now they're kind of boxed in. Now Napoleon at Leipzig could get himself out along that road, but I don't think I know how to do that here. So one last close look at this debacle. There's that Prussian heavy cavalry. And the 2nd Division, whose grenadiers and infantry did a lot of damage to the French 3rd Division. Still some cavalry there, the 4th Division that's not even committed. There's the 4th Division pushing towards Hassenhausen. Most of the French are just trying to retreat and take some position at the same time to defend. That means they have to stay in column to maximize their movement potential. Which means they've been moving very slowly. Moving around to the 3rd Division here that sweeps all the way around that flank. They're opposed by what there is of the French 2nd Division, which is also spread out in squares to the rear. So I don't even know what the French could do to try to defend. They don't have enough units to form, a shield wall of squares. There would be an opening. With all that cavalry, the Prussians, I think, could cycle it pretty easily, hitting not those squares, right around them, right through them, and hit the forces on the opposite side here, either in the flank or in the rear. Since they're being pressed by the Prussian infantry, they can't very well form squares and expect to last very long. So do I attribute this to the masterful Prussian plan to slowly gather themselves along this stream and then move when force, or to a rather stupid French attempt to attack up the road and pierce the line here, thus leaving themselves open? I think it was the French. I mean, it's a good idea for the Prussians not to attack in piecemeal fashion, but the French needed to stay back and try to hold their lines as far back as possible. I think it becomes just a waiting game at that point. If you decide that it doesn't have to end at 1500, play it for a few more hours since there would be that much daylight left, I think you'd still see the French in a lot of trouble with all that cavalry. They just have no way to keep them out of their rear, and therefore no way to really protect themselves. So the Prussians should forget those impetuous attacks. Just gather their forces and move en masse and try to flank with their cavalry when it all arrives.